Just reported back to base. Not that there's anything to report.
No kidding.
Though I guess we've got a special guest coming tonight.
Yeah, Endron rep no less. She should be here soon.
You know they're hiring, right? Think you'd ever make the move to Endron? Hey! What the...
It's October, which means Spooky Game Month. I always look forward to this time because I can find some real gems during Halloween, and I think I managed to stay on target for this year. First, a confession. I think werewolves are cool. It's hard to admit that because if you say anything about wolves online, that usually leads on a certain kind of discussion. But we're not going there. The way I see it, if you had to be cursed to be a Hollywood movie monster, I think werewolves got the sweetest deal out of the bunch. No one outright chases them like Frankenstein. They still got some aspect of humanity, unlike mummies, zombies, and vampires. And speaking of vampires, werewolves can walk around freely in the daytime and have a lower chance of hunters pursuing them. I'm telling you, it's Team Jacob all the way. Which is why I chose to play a Werewolf the Apocalypse Earthblood this season. It's part of the World of Darkness franchise, which includes Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. Not sure if it's World of Darkness's or the devs' call to use parallel naming conventions for the title. Anyways, Werewolf the Apocalypse Earthblood is a 2020 stealth/hack-and-slash title developed by Cyanide Studio. Cyanide is no stranger to stealth games, as they've developed a Stick series starring the titular Goblin Thief. I'd put off on covering Werewolf because I hadn't yet played Bloodlines, but it doesn't really matter anyways, because the two games are completely different kettles of fish to one another.
Forgive me.
Bloodlines has become a cult classic among PC gamers for its open-ended design and smart script in spite of its numerous bugs. It's basically New Vegas for goths. Usually, I describe a game by mashing up two other games based on my frame of reference, and I could do that with Earthblood, but I want to paint a picture in your head before explaining away the meaning of my analogy. There's a set piece in the Incredible Hulk Ultimate Destruction where the game parodies the Metal Gear Solid series, and has a Hulk use a cargo truck to cover himself, similar to how Solid Snake uses cardboard boxes. The Hulk then proceeds to commit to the bit. That set piece is a perfect metaphor for the Earthblood experience. You're a huge, lumbering monster, disguised as something innocuous and sneaking around an enemy base. In Werewolf, you play a werewolf. Shocking, I know. In the World of Darkness setting, werewolves are eco-terrorists who live off the grid while attacking anyone who poses a threat to Mother Earth. Think Greenpeace, but every member has a Fur Affinity account. Werewolves come in different shapes and sizes, and the game likes to hit you with brand new vocabulary as soon as you start. Don't worry about having to memorize all these terms, as I've simplified them. Doggo form lets you shift into a regular looking wolf. Your base speed is much faster and you can crawl around vents. You also have mad ups now, even when you're at a dead stop. You can shift in and out of doggo form at any time, but whenever you have to interact with a terminal or push a button, you shift back into human form. Same goes for whenever you need to communicate with someone on the radio. It's pretty cool the first time you see it. I feel like an Animorphs cover shifting back and forth. For the most part, you'll be sneaking behind enemy lines. I didn't realize this for most of my initial run, but you can bark while in doggo form to pull enemies. I need to test out how effective and precise it is at pulling specific targets, but that did away with my complaints about not having a pull ability. When you get near enemies, you can perform takedowns. Some of them are super handy because you can pull enemies over cover and instantly hide the bodies from plain view. The game is nice because even if an enemy spots you, you still have time to do a takedown to prevent a full-on alert. If you need to deal with a target from a distance, you can use your crossbow. Upgrading the bow lets you shoot down cameras and helmet-wearing guards. There's also a chain shot ability, but I never really found much use out of it. When you get caught, you'll go into combat. During combat, you have two forms, agility and heavy, but an easier way to remember them is twink and borrow. Twink form moves faster but deals less damage and staggers much easier. Borrow form deals more damage and staggers enemies, but moves slower and closes less ground than twink form. The key to combat is knowing when to shift between twink and borrow. While in combat, you'll build up frenzy, but unlike Bloodborne, it's a good thing when your frenzy meter builds up, because then you can trigger frenzy. It's effectively a double trigger, and with the right upgrades, you can even regenerate health while in frenzy. The upgrade system is where Earthblood shares some similarities with Styx. There's no skill tree per se, but a handful of abilities that have either stealth or combat utility and 1 to 2 upgrade steps. I recommend getting the healing ability, as you can use a rage you build up in combat to recover parts of your health meter during a fight. You can also use rage to activate any skills you've acquired. Each combat form can have up to 4 skills, with healing being the only one they share, so you potentially have 7 skills to use in combat. So here's where I do the game matchup comparison. Earthblood is like 50% Alpha Protocol and 50% Prototype. The level design feels very similar to Alpha Protocol for me. It won't blow you out of the water, but it's effective for what the game is going for. Each encounter is cordoned off on a room-by-room basis, and each room has objects you can use as cover to sneak around the patrols. You can crawl into vents that connect in and around certain parts of the room. You'll have access to terminals to deactivate cameras and turrets and unlock doors. There's never a reason not to disable a camera or a turret, as there's no way to hack a turret in the game, which I thought was a missed opportunity. When you engage in dialogue with characters, the game cribs a Mass Effect dialogue wheel, which makes sense as Alpha Protocol cribbed its entire structure off of Mass Effect. However, don't mistake this game as an RPG. There aren't any meaningful choices to make in the dialogue wheel. The only things you can do are ask more questions to get more info on the story, or to cut off the dialogue and move on. Sometimes you'll do something that will unlock a dialogue option for you, but I got confused by the icon for it because it's an open lock, but glancing at the icon made me think that I was locked out of a dialogue option. The closest the dialogue system gets to anything interesting are speech check moments where you'll confront a character about something. They'll say something to provoke you and your rage meter will add up. At any point in the dialogue, you have the option to wolf out and attack the person. It's a cool idea on paper, but honestly, it only mattered a few times because I still had to do combat following one of the speech checks. So where do the prototype comparisons come from? Well, you can grab an enemy and run around with him and watch him flail, kinda like in Prototype. At some point in the game, the enemies start turning into the Flood from Halo, so the monster-on-monster combat starts visually resembling Prototype. The cool thing about every room is that, although they're built around stealth encounters, every piece of cover is destructible, so when you eventually wolf out, the entire place just gets destroyed, and it's so satisfying to watch. That's what makes Werewolf the Apocalypse Earthblood a winner in my eyes. It found a way to make the stealth and combat sections synergize with each other. Let's compare the game to some contemporaries. Despite what my one friend says, Metal Gear Rising is a fun action game. However, it's a bad stealth game. If you manage to sneak around most of the encounters in the game, you're locked out of rank bites which you need in order to get S ranks for any given chapter. And if you play the game as intended, a character action game, your buddies will chide you on codec for getting caught.
Right. I thought you said stealth ops were your specialty.
There's too many mixed signals going on in what the game wants out of the player. If we use another one of Cyanide's titles, Styx Master of Shadows is a pure stealth mode. Sure, if you get caught you can fight your way out for the most part, but there are enemies that you cannot face in direct combat, and you have to take out creatively. In Werewolf, if you're good at stealth, then you can move on to the next section without losing pace. If you fail a stealth encounter, then you can skip all the foreplay of waiting for patrol patterns to line up and just delete everyone off screen. The failsafe for goofing up a stealth encounter doesn't feel punishing as the game just switches gears to a different style of play. I really like how the camera pulls back to give the player a good view of the arena when you enter combat. It's subtle but nicely done. As you progress in the campaign, you can read documents to understand what's been going on in the world, and you can find nature spirits hidden away that you can absorb to gain XP. I've talked a lot about the gameplay, but what about the story? It's there. It's not the worst plot I've seen, but like the stealth, it's not going to blow your mind. You play as Kahal. During an operation against Not BP, your wife gets killed and you succumb to your animal rage. You injure your brother-in-law and kill your buddy. To prevent any more deaths by your paws, you leave your daughter with your wolf pack for 5 years. 5 years later, you rejoin your wolf pack and try to pick up where you left off. Your daughter's following your late wife's footsteps, and you're still trying to take down Not BP. You gain friends, lose friends, go to jail, break out of jail, get betrayed, and confront Not BP in the final act. The one cool thing I like about the game's setting is that each wolf pack is attuned to a local nature god. You can see those gods when you activate detective vision at your wolf den. Our dude's the best because he's sitting down like Thanos in his apology video. So does Werewolf have any faults? Well, I don't know if you've noticed, but this game is by no means a AAA production. The models and textures look dated, and not one of the ladies in the game is a looker by any means. I saw a bad guy A-pose during a cutscene in the first chapter, and characters can and will clip into each other if you know where to place them. In terms of stealth, I'm disappointed that you can't move bodies around considering Cyanide had done so before with Styx, but other than that the game works. I find it annoying that detective vision will go away if you move instead of just being a toggle. Also, I wish the combat forms had a block along with a dodge. I like this game. You ever browse through a list of games and find one you've never heard of and pop it on just out of curiosity? 9 times out of 10 it ends up being a stinker, but every now and then a gem falls on your lap. This is one of those gems. Let me put it this way. I am fascinated with Devil's Hunt, but I do not like it in any way, shape, or form. I am fascinated with Infernal, but again, I do not like it in any way, shape, or form. I enjoyed Morphex and Collapse because they knew what they wanted to be and carried their load. That's what Earthblood is. It knows what it wants to be and carries its load. Try out Werewolf the Apocalypse Earthblood. It's $30 on Steam, so if that's still too much for a meh recommendation, wait for a sale.